Hello and welcome to INFOWARS Nightly News on this February 23rd edition with me, your host, Paul Joseph Watson. And now to the news. Top story tonight, pasteurised milk 150 times more contaminated with blood, pus and faeces than fresh milk. This is from Mike Adams at naturalnews.com. The vaccine-pushing, disease scaremongering agency known as the CDC has put out a stunning piece of propaganda attacking fresh milk, that is raw milk, claiming it's, quote, 150 times more dangerous than pasteurized milk. This is all part of their anti-American agenda to crush food freedom and criminalize fundamental farming practices upon this very nation, upon which this very nation was founded. What the CDC won't dare to reveal to the public is the far more horrifying truth. Pasteurized dairy is produced in the dirtiest milk factories imaginable, where blood, pus, E. coli and other truly dangerous pathogens are routinely bottled into milk containers and fed to consumers. That's the whole point of pasteurization, you see, to kill everything that might be alive in their ultra-dirty milk. The real purpose of pasteurization is not to simply, quote, make milk safe, as is claimed by the CDC, but rather to allow the dairy industry to operate dirty. It's so much easier to just cook the crap out of milk, yes, there's fecal matter in it, than to clean up their operations. Get it? And so the feds are up to their old tricks again with this demonization hit piece from the same CDC that told Americans to rush out and get their swine flu vaccines when, of course, the side effects from the vaccines actually turned out to be a bigger threat than the hyped, manufactured swine flu pandemic itself. Again, which was completely blown out of all proportion by, you guessed it, the CDC, who were tied at the hip with the pharmaceutical companies that made vast amounts of money out of it. And of course, as Mike documents in his article, whereas farms that pasteurize their milk, which is the process of boiling it to get rid of all the bacteria, which includes all the good bacteria, they're some of the dirtiest places imaginable, because the raw milk farms where milk is not boiled to get all the crap and pus and blood and feces out of it, they're subject to so much regulation by the government, because in many countries raw milk is banned. In some US states it's banned, that they have to have far higher standards of hygiene to create raw unpasteurized milk. So they're actually, on average, a lot cleaner than the pasteurized milk dairy farms, which of course is documented in his article, not to mention all the videos of torturing cows and all the other horrible stuff that goes with it. And, you know, 50 years ago, everybody drank raw milk. Today, the hygiene in those farms is way higher because they're subject to stricter standards and regulations. And this is, again, one example of which you can reclaim your food freedom. Stand up to the very machine whose existence relies on pushing sickness and disease so they can keep their partners in the pharmaceutical industry, you know, keep that slush fund going with the partnership with the CDC, which is what they do on a routine basis. So now, again, they're attacking raw milk because they're afraid of Americans reclaiming their food freedom. Fed sick IRS attack dog on anti-war activist Cindy Sheehan. The feds are attempting to silence anti-war activist Cindy Sheehan by suing her for what it says are back taxes she owes the government. In a federal filing in Sacramento, an IRS bureaucrat claimed that Sheehan had refused to provide financial information for the 2000 and 2005, 2006 tax years. On Tuesday, Cindy wrote on her blog that she learned of the government's case against her when a reporter told her about it at a cafe in Vassarville, California. Sheehan talked with the reporter on camera, but, quote, I did not tell him anything that I haven't been publicly and loudly saying since my son was killed in this bloody empire's illegal and immoral war in Iraq. I made a moral decision to refuse to fund the empire's crimes, tortures and wars. I have not been hiding from anybody and I'm fully accessible and easy to find, Sheehan writes. And of course, Sheehan is one of the few prominent leftists who railed against Bush during the height of the Iraq invasion and the aftermath, but is still vocal today in her admonition of Barack Obama, the so-called Nobel Peace Laureate. And the IRS, who Sheehan categorizes as a state-sponsored terrorist organization, you know, they left her alone during the Bush years when she was on the record as publicly withholding taxes as a protest against the wars. But now that the majority of the left has gone to sleep as Obama intensifies the invasions, occupations, and drone attacks, only now has the system decided to take on Sheehan. You know, presumably acting under the assumption that she won't be able to count on enjoying as much publicity as when she was at the height of her prominence during the Bush years. And we know that Obama has rapidly expanded the IRS. We know that he's now directing them to go against his political enemies, of which Sheehan has obviously become one, because unlike most leftists, she's remained vocally critical of the war as it continues under Obama in numerous different guises. Quote, "The feds have thrown down the gauntlet against someone who has absolutely not 1 ounce of fear of them. And when it's over, they'll know they'll have been in a fight," said Sheehan. Unvaccinated kids banned from Indiana school due to measles outbreak. Mass hysteria over a measles outbreak in Hamilton County, Indiana, has led county health officials to irrationally prohibit all unvaccinated children from attending 2 public schools. According to reports, 21 preschool-age students, 7 elementary-age students, and 26 intermediate-age students will not be allowed to attend either White River Elementary School or Noblesville Intermediate School, the 2 schools where there have been confirmed cases of measles, unless they either get the combination measles, mumps, and rubella MMR vaccine, which of course has been linked with deaths and side effects, and the people who have spoken out against it have been vilified and demonized, or wait until 21 days after the last confirmed case of the disease is remediated. And so they're basically telling these kids, if you don't get vaccinated, you're not coming back to school again. It's the hoax of mandatory vaccinations, which is not legal, it's not lawful. In the collective mind of the state, refusal by some students to get vaccinated somehow represents a threat to the other students, even though those other students have been vaccinated. Prohibiting unvaccinated students from attending school on the grounds that they will spread the disease further makes no sense, as those who are vaccinated are said to already have protection against the disease. So more vaccine school tyranny going on there. Next story out, the LA Times. LAPD chief backs driver's license for illegal immigrants. Wading into a divisive, politically charged debate, Los Angeles Police Chief Charlie Beck said Wednesday that California should issue driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. The chief becomes one of the most prominent local figures to support the idea that state lawmakers have battled over repeatedly in the last 15 years. And Beck's stance is certain to further inflame critics who are already angry at the chief for his efforts to liberalize rules on how his officers impound the cars of unlicensed drivers. So while Obama shuts down all the programs to catch illegal aliens, another example of, you know, how American citizens are being treated like absolute scum under the facet of regulation after regulation affecting their every behavior and existence. The illegal aliens are given driver's licenses even though they've broken the law and they're in the country illegally. Anyone who engages in, you know, political activism or criticism of the government is being demonized as a terrorist by the DHS, by numerous federal agencies, the FBI. You know, buy a cup of coffee with cash and you may be a terrorist. The DOD characterizes low-level protest as terrorism. So while American citizens who exercise their rights are being demonized as terrorists, the illegal aliens are being given a free rein. What does that tell you about the attitude of the federal government? Has Ron Paul formed a political alliance with Mitt Romney? And this is obviously from INFOWARS.com today. Big story. The suggestion that Ron Paul and Mitt Romney are in cahoots because Paul is in the frame to become Romney's VP pick has again surfaced following last night's Republican debate in Mesa, Arizona, after which Rick Santorum claimed the 2 candidates were coordinating attacks against his campaign. Quote, "You have to ask Congressman Paul and Governor Romney what they've got going together," Santorum told reporters. "Their commercials look a lot alike, and so do their attacks." Santorum's campaign strategist John Brabender repeated the charge, stating, quote, "Clearly there's a tag team strategy between Ron Paul and Mitt Romney. For all I know, Mitt Romney might be considering Ron Paul as his running mate. Clearly there is now an alliance between those two, and you saw that certainly in the debate." Now, of course, this didn't begin with Rick Santorum. This is not an invention of Rick Santorum. This story's been around for a few weeks now, if not a couple of months. And as far as we can work out, basically what's happened is this. This has not come from Ron Paul himself. It's not Ron Paul's doing. You're never going to see Ron Paul endorse Mitt Romney, you know, the ultimate establishment candidate who, of course, as we know, is the elite's pick for the Republican nomination. If you see, check out some of the links we've posted in this article, it becomes clear that the GOP establishment itself has attempted to some degree of success to infiltrate Ron Paul's campaign and push him towards this alliance with Romney. It's mainly because the establishment does not want Ron Paul to go third party. They don't want him on that libertarian ticket because it could lead to a Ross Perot situation, which is largely out of their control. I mean, that's when the establishment gets nervous, is when they're unable to completely be in control of all the political candidates in the race coming down to the final furlong. So they're basically pushing either Ron Paul or his son, Senator Rand Paul. And to be fair, Rand Paul's come out and said he'd be honored to be Romney's VP. Jesse Benton, Ron Paul's campaign manager, has said words to the same effect. So they're pushing either Ron Paul or Rand Paul to be Romney's VP. This is coming from within the Ron Paul campaign, as far as we can work out. And this is the establishment GOP's attempt to co-opt and control the Ron Paul revolution. They're terrified that Paul's message could eventually take over the Republican Party. So they're trying to be proactive and subvert Ron Paul's campaign. And according to Justin Raimondo, whose article we've got linked up in ours, it's coming from this guy called Trygov Olson, who is one of these pro-interventionist regime change specialists, National Endowment of Democracy and all that, behind the colour revolutions, who now, bizarrely, given his pro-interventionist foreign policy ideas, is an advisor to the Paul campaign. So he's the one pushing Paul towards being, you know, having this alliance with Mitt Romney. Now, on the flip side, you could argue, you know, wouldn't it be fantastic for Ron or Rand Paul to be VP? They'd be one step away from the Oval Office. And you can certainly see it from that perspective, especially given the fact, as we've covered, that Ron Paul's basically being cheated out of primary wins and second place finishes in at least 3 states by the Republican establishment, as we covered yesterday. But what I know for a fact is this, amongst all this speculation about a Ron Paul-Mitt Romney alliance, most Ron Paul supporters absolutely hate the idea. And that's going off not just respondents to the article on our website, but the general sentiment across pro-Paul supporter websites. And you can bet that the establishment media is going to push this story, as they already are, because it certainly works to create divisions within the Ron Paul movement. But as Republican strategist Jack Berkman predicted last week, which we featured on INFOWARS.com, he said there would be a Paul on the Republican ticket. He was talking about a brokered convention. And so if that does indeed happen as a result of an alliance with Mitt Romney, the ultimate establishment candidate, you can bet your bottom dollar that a lot of people are not going to be happy about it, and it's going to cause a great degree of controversy amidst the Ron Paul movement. Now, Lou Rockwell, who of course is close to the Paul campaign, was on the Alex Jones show earlier today, and he had some interesting comments on this subject, so let's hear from him now.
Is it good, instead of just losing and being cheated or whatever, to take a VP run from Mitt Romney and bring all those voters in, defeat Barack Obama, and now have Ron Paul with the bully pulpit to be able to at least inject some sanity? Well, 3 things come into play. I don't think Mitt Romney's going to do that, even though this is the evidence shows being discussed behind the scenes.
Hello and welcome to INFOWARS Nightly News on this February. Dirtiest milk factories imaginable, where blood, pus, E. coli and other truly dangerous pathogens are routinely bottled into milk containers and fed to consumers. That's the whole point of pasteurization, you see, to kill everything that might be alive in their ultra-dirty milk. The real purpose of pasteurization is not to simply, quote, make milk safe, as is claimed by the CDC, but rather to allow milk, that is raw milk, claiming it's, quote, 150 times more dangerous than pasteurized milk. This is all part of their anti-American agenda to crush food freedom and criminalize fundamental farming practices upon this very nation, upon which this very nation was founded. What the CDC won't dare to reveal to the public is the far more horrifying truth. Pasteurized dairy is produced in the February 23rd edition with me, your host, Paul Joseph Watson. And now to the news. Top story tonight. Pasteurized milk 150 times more contaminated with blood, pus and feces than fresh milk. This is from Mike Adams at naturalnews.com. The vaccine-pushing, disease-scaremongering agency known as the CDC has put out a stunning piece of propaganda attacking fresh milk, the dairy industry to operate dirty. It's so much easier to just cook the crap out of milk, yes, there's fecal matter in it, than to clean up their operations. Get it? And so the feds are up to their old tricks again with this demonization hit piece. From the same CDC that told Americans to rush out and get their swine flu vaccines when, of course, the